about the fair program, all the brochures and applications are there. But it began, I don't know, about 15 years ago, named in honor of Edward Fair, who was one of the pioneers in the area of poverty. And he was a kind of idol of a number of us on the faculty who was in law school years ago. He was our mentor. And he was registered for law school. We were setting this up to be a working person for many our friends and masters. And I guess you know that what we do is provide stipends, basically salary, for students to work in public interest law jobs during one of the summers that they're in law school. I'm curious that getting a job in the public interest is as difficult as getting a job in fancy law firms, really, because the great public interest officers don't have money to hire. Not really so much a lot of them don't have money to hire lawyers, but they certainly don't have money to hire summer associates. So we thought we could pay the salary for students to go work at these places, and they have a wonderful experience. They do have a good summer during the work well. But they also see it put them in the work in the world of publishing. What we're also interested in doing is really starting up or creating, we've just felt, a network of error fellows who will both create a public interest community here at Brooklyn Law School, but also out in the world, so that you can follow your footsteps and follow you out there as well. So I'm looking to turn them over to our former sparers. Helen Hunter is the director, what is your title? Is that
Associate Director of Career Services for Public Service.
We decided you were great, we probably do. But she's in charge of getting people public interest as they graduate, and she's part of the Spirit Committee. So I'm going to turn this over to Helen, who's our former Spirit, who'll tell you a bit about those wonderful things that they did last summer.
Thanks, Eve, and thank you everybody very much for showing up, particularly in the rainy weather, and I know how busy everybody is. Eve has told you about the SPARA program itself. One thing she didn't mention is there are applications and brochures in the back, so if after today you're convinced you want to apply, please do so. I should also let you know that I can assist any or all of you in preparing that application. It does require an essay and a resume, so if you want any of those reviewed, edited, substantive comments made, I'm certainly available for that purpose. If you already applied as an incoming student for Brooklyn Law School, there's a short form application that you may use if you wish, so that you don't have to rewrite the essay. However, if you feel that the first time you applied, your essay didn't really accurately represent what you thought you wanted to do, please feel free to submit a complete application anew. And as I said, I'd be very, very thrilled to help any of you with that. I'm looking around and I'm seeing a lot of people I haven't met yet, and not to put the onus on you, but that shouldn't be. My title for myself is Public Interest Goddess. So I want everyone to come to my temple, come to my altar, and really learn and discuss with me what you can be doing, what you should be doing to pursue your interests in this kind of a career. Because as he said, it is very, very competitive. I'm always amazed and inspired by the number of people out there who want to do this work for virtually nothing, particularly in an age when salaries are so high firms. So, like I said, very competitive. You really have to be on top of the game, and it is a very different kind of process than probably any career search you've done previously. So, it would be wise for you to access certified career center. Without further ado, I'm going to spare the introductions. I'll let our fellows introduce themselves, and they'll each comment briefly on their experiences. And if you have questions for that particular fellow, certainly you can ask them at the end, but ask them as we go along, because I think some of our fellows can't make the entire period. Okay? With that, I guess Elizabeth. You can speak there if you feel you're speak loud enough. Okay.
My name is Elizabeth Wilder. This past summer, I used my spare to work at the Center for Reproductive Law and Policy. They are an organization that is devoted to working to provide or to get free access to the full range of reproductive health care services for women, both in this country and abroad. So they have a international program and a domestic litigation department, which I worked in. Let's see, you might have heard of some of the cases they work on, or they have worked on. They were the organization that brought the challenge to the Nebraska partial birth abortion ban, and they just argued the Ferguson case, which is a challenge to the South Carolina hospital policy of drug testing pregnant women and treating those results of this disease. So I found the placement through the NYU Public Interest Fair, which you'll find out about at the approaches. It's usually in January, February. And that's a really great opportunity to go in and get interviews with organizations and also to go and do the table talking to meet and get a lot of information. So what I did at the Center for Reproductive Law and Policy, I got a lot of different kinds of experience. I did a lot of litigation work as well as more substantive issue work via research. I did a state survey of parental involvement laws as well as fetal tissue research scans. So those were really interesting and a good way to get myself familiar with the issues and know the details of them. But in addition, I got to work on some really interesting cases. One is a case brought on behalf of a prisoner in Louisiana who was denied access to an abortion. And in that case, I got to write a motion to proceed under a pseudonym, which is really important in that line of work, as well as draft interrogatories and exception documents. And I also got a chance to work on the Ferguson case in a small capacity. I got to actually write a footnote in our response brief. So that was kind of fun in me writing that. So the organization itself, outside of the work they do, which I mean, it's really great. Oh, in addition, they had weekly round night lunches, and you had, it was a very, very friendly organization, so you can talk to anybody, and we're really working with attorneys and women who are amazing people and really do great work. So just being there was really kind of a privilege, and they're really kind and open, and any questions you ever had, So it was a comfortable situation with amazing people, so it was great. I guess other than that, about the organization, being a SPARE fellow is a really wonderful experience. Not only does it help you get, placements that you might not otherwise have gotten, and not only people put on the resume, but it's also really an ongoing educational and community building experience. We have monthly lunches, and just getting to know other fellows, and it really helps you keep up with some of the issues in the public interest sector, and not just substantively, but also, how to go about getting jobs. So it's really, really being a part of the community. Anyone have any questions? I will not be able to stay, unfortunately. I have a midterm. So if you want to talk to me about the organization or just being fair, feel free to stop me anytime you see me, or I suppose you can talk to Howard.
Hi, my name is Max Marcus. I worked at Human Rights Watch this summer. I should probably preface telling you about Human Rights Watch by saying that before I came to law school, I was a human rights investigator. So Human Rights Watch sent me to Kosovo this summer, but that kind of work would not necessarily, or probably would not be available to an intern. But Human Rights Watch is a fantastic organization with lots of internship opportunities, and so I'll just tell you a little bit about the organization. If you want to know about the work that I did, I'd be glad to talk about that separately, I guess. Human Rights Watch is an organization that has basically two components to it. The field investigation, where they send researchers or investigators out to different countries around the world where human rights violations are being committed to gather information on those abuses. So mainly through interviewing victims of these abuses. And that is usually it's sort of like investigative journalism, but it's much more in-depth and much more focused on a particular issue in a particular region. And so that information is then compiled, usually by the investigator, into a report. And that report is then published by the press section of the organization, which sends out press releases, maybe in press conferences if it's a very controversial issue. And then the report is used by the other half of the organization, which is the advocacy half, which uses that as a tool to pressure governments and pressure the UN or whatever organizations can have some involvement in improving the situation. So, for example, there'll be a researcher going to Bosnia to gather testimony on war crimes committed there, write a report. That report will be published by the press department, and then the advocacy division will take that report, go to the U.S. government and say, this is what's going on in Bosnia, so you should change your policy. Going to the World Bank and saying, you have to be careful not to give money to the person allegedly responsible for war crimes, etc. So it covers kind of the gamut, and in that way, I think as a policy organization, it really knows what it's talking about because it bases its advocacy on its own research. It's not basing it on what they gathered from somebody else or from secondhand information. It's a huge organization. It has regional divisions such as Europe and Central Asia, Africa division, the Middle East division, Americas, which covers both North and South America and Central America. So that division also works on U.S.-based human rights issues. And what did I forget? I think those are the regional divisions. And then there are functional divisions such as the Children's Rights Project, the Women's Rights Project. There's a division that works only on issues relating to the establishment of a permanent international criminal court, which is currently being established, and a division that works on arms issues, the Landmines Treaty and other issues like that. There are a couple of other divisions. Oh, there's the Academic Freedom Division. So in other words, you can either work, if you have a particular interest in one particular region, you can try and get an internship in that division. Or if you're interested in children's rights generally, for example, you could try and get an internship in the Children's Rights Division, which covers children's rights issues worldwide. They have a very extensive need for interns. So even though it may be daunting to think about how many people might want to work at an organization like Human Rights Watch, which it is very well known, in terms of interns, and especially if you're coming with your own funding, like from the SPARE program, they are very, very welcomed and desperately needed there. Sometimes I worked in the Europe and Central Asia division, and we sometimes had 10 interns just in that division in any one semester, because there's an enormous amount of research and writing that goes on there, and a lot of it is very legalistic as well. So there's a great need for interns there. And there's also, I just wanted to mention that Human Rights Watch also has a fellowship program, which you can apply to for your first year out of school. It's a full-time position for that year, and the fellows are very often sent on international missions as well. I think the reason they can't send interns on these kinds of missions is because the time that you're working there, which is approximately a 10-week period, is usually the time it takes to train someone to do these field missions. So just the time doesn't work out. But there's an enormous amount of really incredible work that goes on just in the office. There are speakers who come in every single week, and it's just a really incredible group of people. It's a great way to learn about anything relating to the human rights field. So it's really kind of, if you get your foot in the door there as an intern, you really have a very good chance and you're committed to the human rights work, you have a very good chance of getting a job later on there. SPARE program, I can only reiterate what I'm sure everybody's going to say, that without the SPARE program, all of this kind of work wouldn't be possible, and a lot of these organizations which do not have funding, are really strapped for funding, just can't afford to hire interns, paid interns. And this program enables you to do that kind of work, and also enables you to join together with other students on the campus who are interested in public interest, who you might not even know existed otherwise. It really creates a community of public interest lawsuits.
Hi, I'm Janelle Hafner. I took my SPARE and interned at an organization called Equality Now, which is an international women's rights organization. They're based in New York City, and they actually, I think, opened in, I want to say 1991. So it's been less than 10 years. By that standard, I guess they're fairly new. And in March, they opened up a regional office, their very first one in Nairobi, Kenya. So I took my SPARE and went to Kenya this summer, and I was the first intern that they had from the States, and the first legal intern that they had in the office. It was a really small office.
There's only about 6 of us there full time. And I knew that I was interested in working on issues related to women's economic rights and economic empowerment. Like I said, Equality Now is an international women's rights organization, and they're dedicated holistically, I guess, to kind of the empowerment of women on a political, social, economic level around the world. They target most of their work through what's called the Women's Action Network, and through the New York office and now the Nairobi office, they develop women's actions, which are essentially kind of profiles of an individual case of a woman in a particular country that's been subjected to some form of discrimination through the application of discriminatory law, essentially. And we kind of highlight her personal story and use that to represent the broader picture of what's going on and what women in that particular country or culture or town are facing. So I went over and arrived planning to develop one of these women's actions, and it was going to highlight women's land rights. Land rights are incredibly important in Africa, and women, of course, are at the bottom of the barrel in terms of their ownership and their rights to own and control land. So we focused on Uganda. So I was fortunate enough that I got to go to Uganda for 2.5 weeks to do field research, and I linked up with women's organizations and land rights organizations and other international groups that were over and based in Uganda. And our organization kind of then provided the international element and hooked up with national partners to develop this action. And I was really fortunate to meet a couple of women who came down who had had their land either taken away through all these different applications of both customary and statutory laws that are on the books. I did a lot of research on Ugandan law and a lot of research on customary law, which after spending a year in law school is really difficult to do because it's definitely an oral interview. You really just have to go about word of mouth interviews. But I was able to do enough research that I got a good background grasp on the topic, and I drafted this action highlighting this woman's case and what had happened to her. And Uganda is currently considering passing a bill that would give men and women co-ownership of the marital property upon the marriage, so that women would have 50% claim to all their land, which would really, I think, work to the benefit of most women in Uganda. But polygamy is legal over there, and so there's a large portion of men that are against this law. So part of what I was doing while I was in Uganda was working with these other groups in kind of a mass lobbying effort, trying to encourage passage of the bill and really foster awareness, among members of parliament and other NGOs, nonprofits in the country about what was going on. After spending 2.5 weeks there, I returned to Kenya and spent most of the remainder of the summer really drafting the action and kind of bringing in the necessary legal elements and looking at what international conventions Uganda was a party to and what sections you might be able to apply to encourage kind of the international community to be really concerned about what was going on. So I drafted the action, and by the time I left, the 10 weeks was really big to fly by. I'll send that, it goes quickly. I came back, and just about 2 weeks ago, I finally got the final copy of the action itself, and now Equality Now takes these actions, these kind of like informative newsletters, and sends them out to a group of individuals and organizations and government leaders around the world in what they hope to be a mass grassroots lobbying effort. And we encourage everybody who has this action to then write directly to the officials that we've profiled in the action and encourage them to pass the bill. Just letting them know that the international community is aware of what's going on and seeking change. So it appeals to me in the sense that I think it's somewhat idealistic, but it's also very pragmatic in its today. It's just providing one different component to a national issue. And that was the only project I had the entire summer, and it was the great thing about it though was that it was mine. I mean, I was there from step one, and I was there for the completion of it. So I was really able to develop it and take a lot of pride in the direction it was taking. So I think that I would definitely encourage the placement. It was interesting, as I said, I was the first intern there, so I think that probably had a lot to do with the newness of the experience, and I was very much on my own at times. I felt like we didn't have an incredible amount of direct supervision, which I personally liked, but on the other end of that, it was also much more of a policy-based internship in the sense that I was not providing direct legal services to anybody. So if that's what you're looking for, I would not recommend working for an organization like Equality Now. I knew that's what I wanted. I wanted a legal component to some kind of policy work, and that's what I did. I was able to study the laws in Uganda and in East Africa and see how those were being applied to, impact them in kind of on a policy level. So I was not doing any of the direct legal stuff. It was mainly legal research that I was incorporating into my final product. I like that. And if you do too, if you're interested in any sort of international women's issues, I would recommend the office either in Nairobi or, the New York office is much better staffed. Their resources are 12 times that of what the Kenyan office is. But both offices are really growing and getting a lot of support. Eve Ensler, who's a playwright, this is my anecdote. Eve Ensler, who's a playwright who wrote the Vagina Monologue, who's a women's activist, I love it. She was actually in Kenya working with some people doing kind of a documentary and working on the play, along with Felloship, and that trip was facilitated by Equality Now. So it's great because now events come back to the States and appeared on Oprah, and Felloship on the cover of Marie Claire, and they're talking about Equality Now and the work that they're doing on other issues like girl trafficking and female genital mutilation is a big one in Africa. Prostitution, pornography, land rights, economic empowerment, across the board. It's a really broad range of issues. So it's really, if you don't know exactly what you want to do, I think it's great to work for an organization like Matt says that has a lot of branches because it really lets you kind of pick and choose what you think you might want to work on. As everybody said, the SPARE program, I woke up in June and I was in Africa and I'm working for this fabulous organization with amazing women working on issues of real importance. And I would have never imagined a year ago I would have been there, and the only reason I was because of this program. So I owe it a lot, and I definitely think your options are completely unlimited. You don't have to stay in New York. You don't have to work for legal aid, but you can work for legal aid. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful. So I recommend it. Oh, does anyone have questions?
I do.
Yes.
When I was looking at my job placement last year, I was considering going overseas myself, but I had some issues about languages. Did you have any problems with different languages over there?
Good question. No, I didn't. Kenya is a bilingual country, so everybody speaks English and Swahili, and the same thing with Uganda. So I did not. But people have in fact taken their very discipline and language ability, are fluent in Spanish, have in fact taken their and gone down to Mexico or Puerto Rico or South America and been able to work down there. Also, that brings up another good point. There's a travel stipend that I was able to get that kind of supplemented the up to $350. I don't know if that's the same one or not, but the ticket was very expensive, so you can apply if you're not working in New York for a travel supplement of $350 to your location, which is another great thing about the program.
Hi, I'm Sarah Spearling. I'm a second year, and I did my SPARE Fellowship in Seattle, Washington at the Northwest Justice Project this past summer. The Northwest Justice Project is a civil legal aid office, and I worked on a program called CLEAR, which stands for the Coordinated Legal Education, Advice, and Referral Program. And the thing that is so unique about working out there is that Washington State has a very unique legal aid network. Their entire state is connected. All their legal aid offices are connected, and they do centralized intake in one place, and that's the CLEAR program. So I actually worked on intake and spoke with people all over the state. It's done via a hotline. It's a phone hotline that runs Monday through Friday in the morning, and I had an interest in housing law, so they told me, okay, you can come this summer and be a housing specialist. I was actually their first intern. The program's only about 2 years old. It's the first intern and the only intern in that program. I was supervised by one attorney, but there are about 17 attorneys who work on the CLEAR system, and I worked very closely with all of them. The hardest part about the internship was learning the state law, because Washington state housing law is completely different than New York housing law. So for the first 2 weeks that I was there, very intensively, I learned Washington state housing law. I was reading landlord-tenant books, I was reading property laws, I was reading everything I could get my hands on and going to lectures, learning housing law, and then they just put me on the hotline, start doing intakes by myself in my own office. I started taking phone calls, and I spoke with people, like I said, from every county in Washington state. And the hotline's purpose serves a couple of things. First, it was a referral line so that people who needed legal aid services would call the hotline and say, you know, I'm being evicted, I need an attorney to help me, and we would refer them back to a legal aid office in their own county. And the reason that we did the intake is because it would reserve resources for the local legal aid offices to actually focus on the litigation part of it, as opposed to spending their time just doing intakes and finding out what the problems were and interviewing the clients. So I would interview the clients. If I could give them advice, if they had simple questions, whether it was just, I've been served this eviction notice, what do I do next? Or I have repairs that need to be made, what kind of repairs can I do? Or my house is being foreclosed on, what do I have to do? I could give legal advice over the phone. And then refer them to an office if I felt that they needed actual legal representation. There were many, many counties in Washington state that just don't have the funding for legal aid offices, or else they prioritize cases, and there's a lot of cases that just aren't prioritized enough to even get legal representation. So there were some instances where I could actually take on a case, which they call brief services, and I could do what I could do for them. So there were some instances where I was actually negotiating with other attorneys. I wrote stipulation agreements for people who were being evicted, and we wanted to either extend the time that they had to live in their house or try to work some other arrangement out as far as paying back rent. They weren't being evicted. So I did a lot of talking to landlords and a lot of talking to landlord attorneys. And I also had a chance to go to housing court in Seattle and represent people in administrative hearings. You don't need to be a lawyer to do that. So that would be kind of the first step before people are actually being sued. They could go through administrative law hearings, especially in public housing, if you lived in a project or something run by one of the housing authorities. That's kind of the first step before legal action is taken. And then finally, I also got to write client publications. So this summer, and this is outside of the housing law area, this summer a new law was passed concerning when parents who are divorced can move and take their children with them, either to other parts of the state or outside the state. And one of the services that the Northwest Justice Project provides to people are self-help packets online. So if you can't find an attorney that you need to represent yourself in court, they provide all sorts of court documents and proceedings and information online, and we write all of those pamphlets for people. So I got to write a couple of those client brochures over the summer. So it was really a great internship as far as I got to do everything from research to direct service to writing, and they treated me like another attorney. I mean, I was the first intern they had, and they would introduce me sometimes as, oh, this is our new attorney, and then they'd say, I mean, intern. So it was really great just because I felt like I was just one of everybody else there in the office working to help clients. I got the placement from the NYU Public Interest Fair. I'm from the Northwest, so I was interested in going back to the Northwest, and that's one thing, just like Janelle said, that really is great about this fair program is you can take your fellowship and go anywhere you want in the country or the world. And I also was helped by the travel stipend because it paid for my ticket to go back there. So that's a really great reason to participate in this program. And being in Seattle was really nice this summer. It was great. Any questions?
Hello, I'm Candace Davey. I was actually in New York. I was at Legal Aid Prisoners' Rights Project. The Prisoners' Rights Project is a small impact litigation unit, and for those of you who don't know what that means, it's a unit of the Legal Aid Society that specifically does class actions on behalf of prisoners. They don't do any individual services, although they might if an inmate from the state or the city system would call in with a problem, they might refer them to someone, or else they might just do something on a pro bono basis, outside of their job. But mostly it's a class action litigation unit. There were about, in my unit, the unit's fairly small. I think in my unit there were only 6 interns. I was working directly with 3 attorneys, and I was only working on one case. And the case was on behalf of inmates with HIV in the state system. So that particular case is a discovery. It has been actually for 10 years. That kind of influenced what I was doing. I was involved in, when I was working, half my time was spent actually helping them with that particular case. And when I was doing the direct work with the case, it involved analyzing documents and writing reports. And so I would say, although I didn't, Sarah said that she had to learn Washington state law. I didn't really learn law per se, but I learned all about how the New York State prison system works, which won't necessarily be substantively helpful legally, but I've been prisoner's rights defenders ever since doing so. I'm glad to have that knowledge. And on that aspect, I was specifically working on healthcare, so I know about prisoners, state prisoners, and healthcare. And as I said, it was mostly going to documents. The other half of my position was helping advocate on behalf of class members. A class member in this particular case, as I said, was any inmate in the state with HIV. So most of their problems were medically related, as that was what the suit was about. And so I would advocate through letters and through phone calls on behalf of inmates. And then if they had any questions related to their medical care or any problems in general, since we were an individual services system, I would have to refer them. I would maybe give them packets or send them materials so that they can maybe file a pro se complaint or do something on their own. I would say, I didn't really do that much legal research because I didn't have an opportunity to, and that wasn't, my position was kind of fairly limited in that it was under the control of the person who was the supervising attorney in that particular case. And because legal aid is going through a budget crisis, I was kind of also just doing anything possible that they needed. So I wasn't really doing that much research, but in terms of client contacts, I got that. I also got an understanding of the system and actually got to see firsthand. We had a trip to Rikers Island, and I was supposed to go and do client interviews, although I couldn't because it happened after my internship ended. But in general, that particular unit of legal aid, there are 6 interns, as I said, and I was on the state side, but there's also a city side. And in general, you would help the attorneys in whatever you can do as an intern on behalf of whatever class action that they happen to be working on. I would say that there's educational class actions, there's sexual abuse class actions, there's the one that I worked on, which was dealing with medical care, there's physical abuse class actions, and just would be working with them in whatever capacity that they needed. In general, the 3 attorneys that I worked with were very helpful and nice. They allowed me to go to the strategy and planning meetings. They allowed me to contribute. If they had planned a trip, they would invite me to go and allow me to take part in whatever way I could. And they were just definitely very interested in what my opinions were, and probably because it was a 10-year-old case and I might have had such perception about it. But in general, it was a great experience in terms of that. And I think one of the things about the SPARE program is even if you're somewhat interested in public interest, you might not understand what that entails. You might not know if you want to do direct services or something that's more impact related. And it's an opportunity for you to experience these different things and find out what you're interested in. And then in general, I would say that, as Helen will probably tell you, the public interest community is fairly small in New York, in that a lot of the attorneys know each other, even among different fields of public interest. And it's just, it kind of gives you an opportunity to meet different attorneys who are doing that work. And in general, the Prisoners' Rights Project is just very, I would say, fairly politically motivated. They would allow me to go to meetings that were related to prisoners' rights that they might do in the community. And so I definitely really enjoyed that. I found it at the NYU Job Fair. If you are fortunate enough to get a SPARE Fellowship, I would highly recommend doing, kind of looking earlier than the job fair, because that's not until February, to get a placement. And But anyway, I would suggest going earlier. I know that the people of legal aid in my division were surprised that people weren't coming until February because some positions had already been taken by students who were more, I guess, industrious than people who did the NYU Jeff there. I think that I would just agree with everything that the other fellows have said about the program and stuff. But I would also add that, I mean, in addition to just having a community, I mean, you get to meet the professors who are also in this community at these lunches that we're referring to. There's always a topic that's somehow relevant to public interest, and I would say that those are very informative. And, I mean, I don't know, I mean, I think it's just really important at law school and at Brooklyn Law School in general to kind of have a sense that there are people that care about public interest and that are actually doing it. And I think it's a good opportunity to say that.
Does anyone have any questions for Candace? That was great. Thank you all very much for sharing with us. And if anyone has any questions later on that they didn't think of now or too shy to share, you can certainly approach me or any of the fellows if you see them, and I'd be happy to help. I think that Candace made a really great point, and it was something I said at the beginning, and I guess I can't reiterate it enough, is that even coming with funding, should you get a fellowship, either SPARE or any other sort, it's still very, very competitive. And even though if you're a first year, you're technically not supposed to, or you're not being encouraged to look, start thinking about it. Start looking around, even if you're not sending out letters. Get your resume up to speed, even if you're not going to send it out until the beginning of next semester. Space really fills up quickly, and even if you come to an organization with funding, they may still have to turn you away because they don't have room, they don't have enough computers, they don't have enough desks. So really be aware that while New York has many excellent, fascinating public interest opportunities, it also has many excellent, fascinating law schools with excellent, fascinating law students who might be there before you. So one way to do that, of course, is to come see me, and I can help you start narrowing down your focus and identifying organizations that might be your interest. On your own, I can very strongly recommend going to www.pslawnet.org if you haven't done so already. I'll repeat that, www.pslawnet.org. It's a database run by NYU's Public Interest Law Center. It's really quite excellent. It's certainly not comprehensive, but it's pretty darn close, and that's really nice collection of organizations, and it's not just the New York area, it is national and international. They have over 72 countries listed in over 40 practice areas. So if you can't find something in PS LawNet, definitely come see me, but I might be at my wit's end also. I guess that's it. The applications, like I said, are in the back. They're due October 31st. Please come see me if you have questions or problems or just input. Don't put it off until the last minute. And thank you very, very much for coming. I hope I see all of our applications.
The applications are due on